Hello and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Lucy Tassell.
I'm Zara Seidler.
Pope Francis, the head of the Catholic Church, has died at 88 of a stroke and a heart attack. His death means a process called the papal conclave is about to begin, where senior church leaders will gather in the Sistine Chapel, sequestered from the world, to elect a new pope. In today's episode, we'll explain what we know about this mysterious process, who the contenders are, and why this all comes down to different colours of smoke.
Lucy, earlier this week we learned that Pope Francis had died. We understand that he had been unwell for quite a while, but that he passed on Monday morning. Can you talk to me about Pope Francis and I guess in the first instance about his legacy?
Pope Francis will always be known as the first pope from South America. His election was also significant because he was taking over from a pope who had retired for the first time in 600 years and only the second time in the history of the church. He will also be known for his relatively progressive views and his care for the disadvantaged, the discriminated against. An anecdote that I think really reflects Pope Francis's legacy is that the Pope has an official summer residence, and he said, I'm never going to use it. I won't go on holiday. Turn it into a museum so people can come and visit. And that's what he did. He never went on holiday the entire time, even though he became Pope in his mid-70s. The entire time that he was there, he really felt like he needed to be in service of the church and its people. So those are some of the things that we know about him and about his legacy. In a couple of weeks, though, Catholics will have a new pope, a new head of the church, someone who'll go from being known by a few thousand people to billions of people.
And obviously the election of a new pope is so significant. But I guess before we go into what the process is, for those who are perhaps less familiar with the Catholic Church, can you just explain what the role of the pope actually is?
Catholics believe the Pope is God's representative on earth and that any official declarations by the Pope can't be wrong because they come through him from God. The role of the Pope has existed since the earliest days of the Church, and Catholics actually believe the first Pope was one of Jesus' 12 disciples, St. Peter. Today, the Pope also has a formal role as the head of state of Vatican City, which is a city-state inside the city of Rome, the capital of Italy. The Vatican is both a sacred site for Catholics and it's also the Church's headquarters. It has observer status at the United Nations, and its small population is mostly people who work for the Church, as you would imagine. The Pope's responsibilities also involve leading masses, which is like the Catholic religious observance, publishing reflections on world events and on holidays, and meeting members of the Church and also world leaders at the Vatican. For example, it's believed that the last person Pope Francis met with was US Vice President J.D. Vance, who of course converted to Catholicism a couple of years ago. Again, we'll touch on that later.
Yeah. Okay, and so these are the responsibilities of the Pope, but how does someone ascend to the papacy?
Something I learned while researching this podcast today, which is very surprising to me, is that technically any baptized Catholic man could become the Pope.
Oh, interesting.
They could all go in there to the secret conclave and write in J.D. Vance if they wanted to. It's extremely unlikely. Only cardinals, which is a senior church leader, have been named the Pope since the 14th century. When something has existed for as long as the Catholic Church has as an institution, you tend to get these kind of very long-term trends.
Yeah.
So 700 years of only cardinals.
What is a cardinal?
A cardinal is a senior advisor to the Pope. The Pope can appoint them from different places around the world. They vote on who becomes the Pope. They're part of an organisation called the College of Cardinals. And so they are the ones who vote in a process called the conclave, which gave its name to an Oscar-winning movie from earlier this year.
People might be familiar with the name of that process now.
So, and that film actually, despite having very dramatic developments, I think the process, to my understanding, is depicted fairly accurately, which is all these senior advisors from all around the world. They gather in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican and they vote until they have decided on who will be the next pope. They're not allowed to speak to anyone in the outside world while this is happening. It's called being in seclusion. And also only cardinals under the age of 80 are allowed to vote. I imagine because it's about who will be taking the church into the future. Yeah. That means about half of the current number of cardinals are not going to be voting, and they vote until they secure a 2/3 majority of votes, until one candidate does rather, and then something really exciting happens, which is they release white smoke into the air to let the world know we have chosen a pope. At the end of every previous vote that does not result in an elected pope, they release black smoke.
And I learned while I was reading your post that smoke is in part formed by burning the ballots that people are voting with, or the cardinals are voting with.
Yeah, the level of seclusion extends even to who voted for what and how many people got what vote, we really don't know. That's what's kind of bananas about this process in the modern world. It is truly a mystery. We only know the basic mechanics. We will never know who voted for whom and how many people were contenders and then fell away. We can get a rough sense of how many rounds of voting there were by how many times the black smoke is released. But other than that, we have no idea what the discussions were.
Wow, it's fascinating. And so you're saying black smoke shoots up if they are unsuccessful in choosing a pope, but when that 2/3 majority is reached and a pope is declared, white smoke comes up.
Yes.
What happens after that?
Hello, Billy here from TDA. We have just looked at our YouTube analytics and 95% of you who are watching our videos aren't subscribing. If you want to help independent media like us grow, the best way you can do that is by pressing subscribe. Thank you so much, and back to the video.
And I'll also note, if it's cloudy, the white smoke can be really hard to spot.
Yeah,
that has actually been an issue in the past.
Interesting.
So then the head of the College of Cardinals comes out on a balcony at St. Peter's Basilica. Typically, thousands of people are gathered in the square waiting, or they've gathered after seeing the white smoke to say, okay, we're going to go and see the new Pope. The Dean of the College of Cardinals comes out onto the balcony and says a Latin phrase, habemus papam, which means we have a Pope. And then the new Pope comes out and says, hello, I'm the Pope. Hello to the billions of Catholics around the world. My new name is blank.
Talk to me about that new name part, because again, I'm not overly familiar with certain parts of Catholicism, and so learning all of this has been so fascinating for me. Where do popes get their names from?
The Pope takes on a name from the Church's history that they want to guide their intentions in the role. So, for example, Pope Francis is named Francis after Saint Francis of Assisi because he said he wanted to emulate his care for the poor and the downtrodden. In the past, if you take the same name as a previous pope, then you add a number to your name. So, for example, if the new pope takes John, he'll be John the 24th because there have been 23 previous Johns. He might be taking that to represent John the Baptist, an important Catholic figure. He might be saying, I want to be just like John the 23rd. It's any number of reasons which will be explained.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And so just on that, we are at this point now where there will be a new pope and this conclave process will now unfold. Do we know who is, I don't know, I guess a front runner to become the next pope? What do we know about that?
There's a saying I've just learned in the process of researching this, which is you enter a conclave a pope, but you leave a cardinal, which basically means you can enter as a front runner and then things can go completely differently once they're in seclusion and sequestered from the rest of the world. But international media has speculated, and here are three main contenders from what I saw. So the first is Cardinal Luis Tagle. He's the former Archbishop of Manila. He's widely considered to be the closest to Francis in terms of caring about social justice and in terms of how they think about leading the church. He's 67, and if he's elected, he would be the first pope from East Asia. I specify this because there were a couple of popes from Syria in the church's first 1,000 years, but not since then. It's mainly been European. The next one is Cardinal Peter Erdo, who's the Archbishop of Budapest. He's a conservative, but he worked effectively with Francis, a progressive. He's 72 and he has strong connections with European and African bishops. So that could mean that they join together to vote him in. It's entirely possible. We don't know. And then the third one I wanted to raise is Cardinal Pietro Parolin. He was the Pope's second in command. He's 70 and he worked for a long time as a diplomat for the church. He negotiated a number of key agreements. He also met with US Vice President J.D. Vance last week, and a Vatican statement about that meeting said it included, quote, an exchange of opinions about migrants, refugees and prisoners. So could be interesting if he is elected to see how he navigates the church's relationship with the world. But as I said before, we just don't know.
I mean, it seems like we're going to have to wait and see what happens and wait for that white smoke. When does this process actually kick off, though? You said it can take a number of days. When does it begin?
It doesn't actually begin for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So the Vatican is in an official period of mourning. Then there'll be meetings among the cardinals ahead of the conclave. Many of these cardinals are based at the Vatican, but plenty are also coming from all over the world. So we have to account for travel time, including for Australia's cardinal, Mikola Bechuk. He's 44, which makes him the youngest member of the College of Cardinals. And he was actually only made a cardinal last year by Pope Francis. He was born in Ukraine and moved to Australia in 2021 when he was given a senior position in the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church based in Australia. This church is a subsidiary of the larger church. The fact that he was elected so recently, the fact of his age, the fact that he's from a subsidiary branch, all mean it's unlikely that he becomes the Pope, but
never say never?
Never say never. It's possible. It's unlikely, but it's certainly possible. You never know. The conclave is a mystery.
Wow, it really is. Lucy, thank you so much for explaining that. It's such a fascinating topic and has so much influence on the rest of the world, and yet we know so little about what actually goes on. So thank you for shedding a bit of light there. And thank you for joining us for another episode of The Daily Aus. We'll be back later today with the day's headlines, but until then, have a great day.